Cleopatra Seventhia Philopator, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, was born in late 70 BC or early 69 BC in Alexandria, a vibrant Hellenistic metropolis founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC. Alexandria was a cultural and intellectual epicenter, with legally segregated quarters for Greeks, Egyptians, and Jews, prohibiting intermarriage to maintain ethnic hierarchies in cities like Alexandria, Naucratis, and Ptolemy Hermia. The kingdom's diverse population, including Macedonians, Persians, and native Egyptians, was governed by a centralized bureaucracy exploiting the Nile Valley's fertile lands for grain, papyrus, linen, and glass production, which sustained Egypt's wealth and trade with regions like India and Arabia. As a descendant of Ptolemy I Soter, a Macedonian Greek general and somatophylax, bodyguard, of Alexander who seized Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 BC during the Wars of the Diadochi and declared himself king in 305 BC, Cleopatra grew up in a court blending Hellenistic Greek customs with Egyptian pharaonic traditions for legitimacy. These included coronations at Memphis by the high priest of Ptah and depictions as divine rulers, such as Isis and Osiris, to appeal to native subjects. Her father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, the flute player, was a weak, indulgent ruler fond of Dionysian festivals, music, and lavish spending, who faced chronic financial crises, pawning royal artifacts like the diadem to fund bribes and accruing debts equivalent to Egypt's annual revenue of approximately 12,000 talents. Her mother is traditionally identified as Cleopatra v. Tryphonina, Ptolemy XII's sister wife, who vanished from records shortly after Cleopatra's birth, though scholars like Dwayne W. Roller suggest a concubine from the priestly family of Ptah in Memphis, potentially introducing Egyptian ancestry to explain her linguistic affinity. However, consensus among historians like Christopher Bennett and Michael Grant supports predominantly Macedonian Greek heritage with minor Iranian, Sogdian and Persian influences through ancestors like Cleopatra I Syra, daughter of Antiochus III the Great and Laodice III of the Seleucid Empire. Roman sources like Strabo's claims of illegitimacy were likely propaganda, and her physical appearance is debated from coin portraits showing a prominent hooked nose, strong chin, melon hairstyle, and possibly a honeyed or olive Mediterranean complexion, refuting romanticized notions of fair Greek or darker African features. Cleopatra had several siblings entangled in the dynasty's incestuous and violent politics: older sisters Cleopatra VI Tryphonina, possibly a brief co-ruler, Berenice IV Epiphania, executed 55 BC, younger brothers Ptolemy XIII Theos Philopator and Ptolemy XIV Philopator, and sister Arsinoe IV. All potential rivals in a system normalizing sibling marriages to emulate Egyptian deities and preserve bloodline purity amid Seleucid and Persian intermarriages. Cleopatra's early life was marked by an exceptional education, political turmoil, and exposure to imperial intrigue. Tutored by the scholar Philostratos in Greek oratory, philosophy, and possibly medicine, later pseudepigraphical texts attributed to her on alchemy, cosmetics, gynecology, and weights/measures reflect her scholarly reputation. She studied at the Museum and Library of Alexandria, repositories of up to 700,000 papyrus scrolls that attracted intellectuals like Euclid, Archimedes, and Eratosthenes in prior centuries. Uniquely among Ptolemies, she mastered Demotic Egyptian, enabling direct communication with native subjects, alongside Koine Greek, Ethiopian, possibly troglodyte dialects of Red Sea coastal dwellers, Hebrew or Aramaic, Arabic, Syriac, Median, Parthian, and Latin. This linguistic prowess, documented by Plutarch, facilitated her ambition to restore lost Ptolemaic territories in Cyrenaica, Syria, Cilicia, and Judea. At around age 11, in late 58 or early 57 BC, she likely accompanied her father during his exile, triggered by Alexandrian riots over oppressive taxation, economic mismanagement, and Rome's annexation of Cyprus in 58 BC by Publius Clodius Pulcher, which cost Egypt 6,000 talents annually. They resided at Pompey's villa near Praeneste in Italy's Alban Hills and later at the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, where Ptolemy XII assassinated Berenice IV's envoys to Rome and bribed figures like Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar with loans from banker Gaius Rabirius Postumus, totaling 6,000 talents. roughly £7 million or 17 million US dollars in modern equivalents, to secure his status as friend and ally of the Roman people. In spring 55 BC, Roman governor Aulus Gabinius of Syria, supported by a young Mark Antony commanding cavalry, who reportedly admired the 14-year-old Cleopatra, reinstated Ptolemy XII through brutal campaigns, massacring opponents and executing Berenice IV, leaving the Gabiniani garrison of 2,000 Roman soldiers who later turned lawless, exacerbating famines from low Nile floods in 50 to 49 BC and 43 to 42 BC, possibly linked to volcanic eruptions like Mount Etna's in 44 BC, which cooled the climate and reduced Nile inundations. Ptolemy XII, regaining stability, funded construction at temples like Edfu, dedicated to Horus, and Dendra, dedicated to Hathor, and on May 31, 52 BC, named Cleopatra regent via an inscription at Dendra's Temple of Hathor, before dying before March 22, 51 BC, possibly aligned with a partial solar eclipse on March 7, leaving 17.5 million drachmas in Roman debts. Upon Ptolemy XII's death, Cleopatra, aged 18, ascended as co-ruler with her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII per his will and Ptolemaic sibling marriage customs, scandalous to Greeks but echoing Egyptian traditions of divine pairings like Isis and Osiris. Her first official act was a ceremonial voyage to Hermonthis near Thebes around 51 BC to install a new sacred Bacchus bull, embodying the war god Montu, affirming her role as high priestess to legitimize her rule among native Egyptians. Inheriting a kingdom beset by drought-induced famines, economic strain from Roman debts, and the unruly Gabiniani, she delayed notifying the Roman Senate of her father's death until months later, possibly August 1 or June 30, 51 BC, dating papyri as the 30th year of Auletes, which is the first year of Cleopatra. By August 29, 51 BC, she issued documents and coins solely in her name. Some debate whether a stele overwrote her father's portrait, adopting the epithet Thea Philopator, goddess who loves her father, and marginalizing Ptolemy XIII, provoking his advisors, the eunuch Pothinus, or Pothinos, a financial minister, General Achilles, commanding the Egyptian army and Gabiniani, and rhetorician Theodotus of Chios, Ptolemy XII's tutor. These advisors, wielding influence over the young king, orchestrated Cleopatra's exile to Syria by summer 49 BC amid civil unrest, where she rallied a mercenary army of Arab nomads and exiles but was stalled at Pelusium by her brother's forces, numbering around 20,000. The intersection of Egyptian strife with Rome's civil wars proved pivotal. In September 48 BC, Pompey the Great, defeated by Julius Caesar at the Battle of Pharsalus on August 9, 48 BC, sought asylum in Egypt but was assassinated on September 28 near Pelusium by Achilles and Lucius Septimius, a Gabiniani officer, under Ptolemy XII's orders to curry favor with Caesar. Caesar, arriving in Alexandria on October 2 with 4,000 troops, 2 legions, including the 6th and 27th, was horrified by the murder of his former ally and son-in-law, seizing the royal palace as executor of Ptolemy XII's will, invoking Roman interventionism established since Ptolemy's assassination in 80 BC. Exiled Cleopatra, demonstrating cunning, allegedly smuggled herself into Caesar's quarters in a carpet or bed sack carried by her Sicilian servant Apollodorus, enchanting the 52-year-old general with her intellect, charisma, shared Hellenistic heritage, and multilingual finesse, forging a romantic and political alliance that ignited the Alexandrian War, 48 to 47 BC. Ptolemy XII's 20,000-strong army, bolstered by Arsinoe IV, who proclaimed herself queen and allied with Achilles, besieged the palace, setting fire to harbor ships and inadvertently destroying parts of the Library of Alexandria, with losses estimated at 40,000 to 700,000 scrolls, though some scholars like Luciano Canfora argue the damage was limited to a warehouse of stored texts. Cleopatra and Caesar endured months of urban warfare, with Caesar burning his own ships to prevent enemy capture and using the Pharos lighthouse as a stronghold. Relief arrived in late March 47 BC with Mithridates of Pergamon's 20,000-man army, including Jewish contingents under Antipater, father of Herod the Great. The Battle of the Nile on March 27 saw Caesar's forces rout Ptolemy XII's army, the young king drowned fleeing in an overloaded armored boat. Victorious, Caesar reinstated Cleopatra as co-ruler with 12-year-old Ptolemy XIV, whom she ritually married, executed Pothinus, and captured Arsinoe IV for his later triumph, spared at Cleopatra's request and exiled to the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. On June 23, 47 BC, she bore Ptolemy XV Caesar Ion, privately acknowledged as Caesar's son, despite public denials in Gaius Oppius's pamphlet, and deified as Horus in Egyptian iconography to bolster legitimacy. Cleopatra joined Caesar on a lavish 2-month Nile cruise aboard the Thalamigos royal barge, a 300-foot-long, multi-decked vessel with dining halls, gardens, and shrines, showcasing Egypt's agricultural wealth, grain fields, palm groves, temples, and pyramids, to solidify their alliance. Caesar, influenced by astronomer Sosigenes of Alexandria, reformed the Roman calendar into the Julian system in 46 BC, adding a leap year every 4 years, and left 3, later 4, legions under Rufio, a freedman's son, for her protection. In mid-46 BC, Cleopatra traveled to Rome at Caesar's invitation, residing in his Trans-Tiberum villa, Horti Caesaris, with a 100-person entourage, including Caesar Ion, scandalizing Roman conservatives like Cicero, who in letters described her as arrogant and corrosive to republican values, fearing her influence on Caesar's monarchical ambitions. Caesar honored her with a gilded bronze statue as Isis in the Temple of Venus Genetrix, unveiled in 46 BC, linking her to his Julian divine descent from Aeneas and Venus, and minted groundbreaking coins with his living portrait, a first in Roman history, while Cleopatra's image appeared on Roman denarii, a bold diplomatic statement. She observed his quadruple triumph in August 46 BC, featuring Arsinoe IV in golden chains, later exiled to Ephesus at Cleopatra's plea, and navigated Roman politics amid escalating anti-monarchical tensions under Caesar's perpetual dictatorship. His assassination on the Ides of March 15, 44 BC by Brutus, Cassius, and over 60 senators imperiled Cleopatra. She departed Rome by mid-April amid riots, with Mark Antony's eulogy displaying Caesar's bloody toga inciting mob violence. Returning to Egypt by July 44 BC, Ptolemy XIV died suspiciously, likely poisoned by Cleopatra, as suggested by Appian and Josephus, to elevate 3-year-old Caesar Ion as co-ruler, quashing succession rumors. As Rome fractured between the liberators, Brutus and Cassius, and the Second Triumvirate, Octavian, Antony, Lepidus, formalized on November 27, 43 BC, Cleopatra maneuvered astutely, initially supplying Publius Cornelius Dolabella, Caesar's consul, with 4 legions and ships in Syria before aligning with the triumvirs after their victories at Philippi on the 3rd and the 23rd of October 42 BC, providing grain and 20 warships while claiming neutrality. She ordered Arsinoe IV's execution in Ephesus in 41 BC on Antony's command to eliminate rivals, a move that solidified her position but alienated some Egyptian elites loyal to her sister. Cleopatra's legendary alliance with Mark Antony began in summer 41 BC when he, as triumvir overseeing the East, summoned her to Tarsus in Cilicia to answer charges of aiding Cassius with funds and ships. Arriving on a gilded barge with purple sails, silver oars, and dressed as Aphrodite flanked by Cupids and Nereids, as vividly described by Plutarch, she captivated the 42-year-old Antony with wit, lavish banquets, and intellectual discourse, absolving herself and prompting Arsinoe IV's execution. They wintered in Alexandria as the Inimitable Livers, or Incomparable Livers, a society dedicated to feasts, dice games, fishing pranks, and cultural pursuits like attending lectures and theater. Antony granted her Phoenicia, Coele Syria, Cyprus, parts of Cilicia, and Chalkis in the Bekaa Valley, while she leveraged Egypt's bureaucratic efficiency, overseen by a Dioiketes, finance minister, and Nome Strategoi, regional governors, to supply grain, funds, and ships. By autumn 40 BC, she bore twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene II, named for the sun and moon to evoke divine lineage. Antony returned to Rome, marrying Octavian's sister Octavia Minor in October 40 BC under the Treaty of Brundisium to stabilize the triumvirate after conflicts with Sextus Pompeius. Reuniting in Antioch in winter 37/36 BC after divorcing Fulvia, they married, though Roman law disputed its validity due to his marriage to Octavia, and Antony expanded her domains with Crete, Cyrene, and Herod the Great's balsam groves in Judea, yielding 200 talents annually, antagonizing Herod, whom she further pressured for control of Arabian Nabatean territories and the bitumen-rich Dead Sea. In 36 BC, Ptolemy Philadelphus was born amid Antony's catastrophic Parthian campaign, 36 to 35 BC, aiming to conquer Parthia to rival Caesar's Gallic triumphs but losing 30,000 men, nearly half his force, to harsh winters, Armenian king Artavast's Tus defection, and Parthian guerrilla tactics under Phraates IV. Antony spun the retreat as a victory, holding a triumph in Alexandria in 34 BC, the first in a foreign city, offending Roman sensibilities. The 34 BC donations of Alexandria, a grandiose ceremony at Alexandria's gymnasium, proclaimed Cleopatra, Queen of Kings, and Caesar Ion, King of Kings, as co-ruler of Egypt and Cyprus, attiring Alexander Helios in Median Persian garb to rule Armenia, Media, and Parthia, Cleopatra Selene II over Cyrenaica and Libya, and Ptolemy Philadelphus in Macedonian attire over Phoenicia, Syria, and Cilicia. This reallocation of eastern territories to her children, staged with golden thrones and theatrical pomp, incited Roman fears of a Hellenistic Egyptian empire supplanting Roman dominance, fueling Octavian's propaganda portraying Cleopatra as a decadent threat. As absolute monarch, Cleopatra wielded pharaonic authority, serving as high priestess in Egyptian and Greek cults, overseeing rituals at temples like the vast Hathor complex at Dendera, initiated by Ptolemy XII, depicting Cleopatra and Caesar Ion, the Monta shrine at Armont, and the Caesareum in Alexandria, dedicated to Caesar as Zeus Ammon, later co-opted by Augustus. She managed a command economy with state monopolies on papyrus production, oil pressing, beer brewing, salt, and textiles, fixed exchange rates between Greek silver drachmas and Egyptian bronze coins, tariffs on Red Sea and Mediterranean trade, and edicts binding peasants, laui, to farmlands during harvests to ensure agricultural output, vital as Egypt supplied one-third of Rome's grain. She debased currency, issuing bronze and silver tetradrachms without gold standards, to fund military campaigns and alliances, with coins minted in Alexandria, Cyprus, and Antioch bearing her portrait and titles like Basilissa, Queen. Facing famines in 43 to 42 BC and 41 to 40 BC due to low Nile floods, she distributed royal granaries, waived taxes, and compulsory labor for priests as per a February 33 BC Heracleopolis papyrus signed Gamma Nu Omicron Iota Tau Omicron, let it be done, in her Greek hand, and supported Jewish communities by building synagogues and granting asylum to Onias IV, who established a Jewish temple at Leontopolis. Culturally, she patronized Hellenistic arts, philosophy, and science at the museum, commissioning works and hosting scholars like Didymus Chalcedrus, while adopting Egyptian regalia, coins depicting her with a melon coiffure, diadem, aquiline nose, and resolute jaw, blending masculine authority, inscribed as king in some contexts, with feminine charisma, identifying as Isis incarnate to unify Greek and Egyptian subjects. She quelled Theban revolts by appointing loyal governors like Callimachos and coerced tribute from Nabatean king Malichus I, though her demand strained relations with allies like Herod. Tensions with Octavian escalated in 32 BC when he declared war on Cleopatra in the Roman Senate, framing it as a foreign threat to avoid civil war stigma, illegally seizing Antony's will from the Vestal Virgins, which favored Cleopatra's heirs and requested burial in Alexandria, and stripping Antony of his consulship and triumviral powers. Their forces assembled at Ephesus, a 500 warship fleet, 200 Egyptian, including heavy quinquiremes, and 150,000 troops, but faltered due to poor strategy, supply shortages, malaria outbreaks in their Samos camp, and Octavian's propaganda vilifying Cleopatra as a debauched foreign whore enslaving Antony, circulated through poets like Horace and Propertius. The Battle of Actium on September 2, 31 BC in the Ambracian Gulf saw Agrippa's 400 agile Liburnian ships outmaneuver their heavier quinquiremes in a 6-hour clash, Cleopatra, commanding 60 Egyptian ships from the rear, broke through the blockade with her treasure-laden squadron amid confusion, followed by Antony, who abandoned his flagship for a faster pentaconter, leading to the surrender of 19 legions and 12,000 cavalry the next day and mass desertions, including key allies like Quintus, Dellius and Amyntas of Galatia. Retreating to Alexandria via Paraetonium and Berenice, they faced further betrayals. Herod defected to Octavian after Cleopatra's failed attempt to flee to India was thwarted by Malichus burning her Red Sea fleet at Berenice. Antony's final land victory at Paraetonium in July 30 BC, capturing the port, proved futile. On August 1, 30 BC, Octavian entered Alexandria unopposed after Antony's remaining troops, including the Gabiniani, capitulated. Deceived by a false report of Cleopatra's death, spread by her to test his loyalty or manipulate negotiations, Antony stabbed himself with his gladius, dying in her arms as she hoisted him by ropes to her fortified mausoleum, packed with treasures like gold, jewels, and royal regalia. Captured by Octavian's agents Gaius Proculius and Cornelius Gallus, who prevented her suicide by disarming her, Cleopatra negotiated futilely for her children's lives and Egypt's semi-autonomy, possibly offering her treasury or retirement to a private estate, but refused to be paraded in Octavian's triumph, a humiliation for a queen claiming divine descent. She died on 10 or August 12, 30 BC, aged 39, likely by poison, a venomous fig, toxic ointment, or draught concealed in a hairpin, though Roman lore popularized an asp, Egyptian cobra, bite on her arm or breast for its symbolic link to Isis and divine kingship, with debates persisting on suicide versus Octavian-orchestrated murder to eliminate a political threat. Her loyal attendants Iras and Charmian followed, with Charmian's dying words defiantly praising her as befitting a queen descended of so many royal kings. Octavian buried her with Antony in her mausoleum, possibly near Alexandria's royal quarter, though its location is lost, potentially submerged under modern Alexandria due to seismic activity and sea level rise from the 365 and 1303 AD earthquakes. He executed 17-year-old Caesar Ion near Alexandria, possibly at Pelusium, to eliminate Julian rivals, but spared Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene II, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, sending them to Rome under Octavia's care. Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus died young, likely of illness, by 25 BC, but Cleopatra Selene II married Juba II of Mauritania around 25 to 20 BC, ruling there and minting Ptolemaic-style coins with Egyptian motifs, building temples like those at Volubilis, until her son Ptolemy of Mauritania's execution by Caligula in AD 40 ended the Ptolemaic line. Egypt became the Roman province of Aegyptus, governed by a prefect of equestrian rank to prevent senatorial power bases, its grain wealth, producing 135 million modii annually, funding Augustus's, formerly Octavian, empire and transformation into a monarchy. Cleopatra's legacy evolved from Roman vilification. Horace called her a fatal monster and mad queen in his odes. Virgil depicted her Actium defeat on Aeneas's shield in the Aeneid. Propertius branded her a harlot queen of licentious Canopus in his elegies, to medieval veneration as a scholar, alchemist, and romantic figure in Geoffrey Chaucer's The Legend of Good Women, Giovanni Boccaccio's De Mulieribus Claris, and Arab chroniclers like al-Masudi, who praised her as a builder and philosopher, attributing pseudepigraphical texts on alchemy, medicine, and mathematics to her. Renaissance artists like Michelangelo and Giovanni Battista Tiepolo portrayed her as a tragic heroine, while Shakespeare's 1607 Antony and Cleopatra emphasized her passion and wit, drawing from Plutarch's Lives. Modern portrayals, from Henry Rider Haggard's 1889 novel Cleopatra to Cecil B. DeMille's 1934 film with Claudette Colbert and the 1963 epic with Elizabeth Taylor, costing $44 million, nearly bankrupting 20th Century Fox, often glamorize her allure, overshadowing her as a polyglot, naval commander, economic strategist, and administrator who nearly forged a Greco-Roman Egyptian empire. Archaeological efforts, such as Kathleen Martinez's excavations since 2005 at Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, uncovered 200 coins, statues, and a cemetery suggesting a royal burial, while 2023 to 2025 underwater discoveries off Alexandria's coast, including a sunken port and 338 coins bearing Cleopatra's face in a tunnel, hint at her tomb, potentially submerged by 1303 AD earthquakes, as explored in the documentary Cleopatra's Final Secret. The mistakes leading to Cleopatra's downfall included her over-reliance on Mark Antony, whose catastrophic 36 to 35 BC Parthian campaign squandered resources and prestige, undermining their military credibility, the provocative 34 BC donations of Alexandria, which Octavian exploited through propaganda to portray her as a foreign threat aiming to enslave Rome, rallying public support, her ill-advised decision to command at Actium against military advice, triggering a premature retreat amid chaos. That led to mass defections, including key allies like Herod and Malichus I, her failure to secure broader alliances, such as alienating Herod through greedy demands for Judea's balsam groves and Arabian territories, prompting his defection to Octavian, neglecting internal cohesion, with unrest in Upper Egypt and among Alexandria's elites, and underestimating Octavian's ruthless propaganda and military strategy, rejecting surrender terms that might have preserved her life, her children's futures, or Egypt's semi-autonomy, ultimately dooming pharaonic independence and ushering in Roman domination.